Hello, sharing another thought. Holy Spirit's been visiting, and today's thought is about just redemption and accepting Jesus's mercy, God's mercy and grace. And I've been thinking a lot about Judas and how Judas betrayed Jesus, of course, and he was an apostle, but so was Peter. Peter was the rock on which Jesus was going to build his church, or did build his church. Peter was one of the favorite apostles that Jesus loved, and Peter loved Jesus dearly. But both men betrayed Jesus. And while obviously we hear a lot about Judas and how Judas was not as close with Jesus as Peter was, but how Judas, of course, betrayed him, ended up committing suicide, and that was it for Judas, although obviously he lives in infamy. But then you have Peter, who betrayed Jesus, who received the grace of forgiveness and went on to live a very, very constructive life as far as the church was concerned. It's just a reminder of how we all sin and we feel horrible about our sin. I'm sure I know Peter felt horrible. He loved Jesus. He didn't want to betray him. And yet he was able to accept the grace of forgiveness and went on to accept the Holy Spirit and lead the apostles and is in heaven looking down. Whereas Judas betrayed Jesus, felt horrible about it to the point where he committed suicide, which is pretty scary. It means that Judas did feel bad, couldn't live with himself. Now, I don't know if he couldn't live with himself because he just felt bad and was filled with self-pity and couldn't get over it, or he actually felt bad about what he did to, the greatest God/man to ever be here on earth. Either way, he couldn't overcome his grief. And it reminds us that we sin and we feel horrible. But if we don't accept that grace, how do we move on? How do we become a better person? How do we accept the whole grace that was granted because of Jesus's death and the blood he shed? And what a waste. What a gift. And what a waste if we don't accept the gift. As we look to the next few years that are getting pretty tough here on earth, end times, tribulation, it reminds me of just potentially a feeling we might have if, for example, there is a pre-trib rapture and we're not raptured. How are we going to feel? We're believers. We think we're decent people. We might not know why we weren't raptured, but we're going to feel horrible. And so how do you go on from that? How do we go on knowing I didn't make the tribulation? And I was warned about it and I was told about it, but I didn't make it. How do I go on with my life knowing what the earth is going to be for the next 7 years? Knowing that this is going to be the worst time on earth. Those that make it through whatever's about to happen, whether it's plagues or nukes or whatever, we just have to keep living, How do we go on? How do we go on like Peter did? We have to go on because we're still believers, and the Holy Spirit's going to be removed. The restrainer will be removed from earth. And so it's going to feel very lonely. I mean, if we sometimes get lonely now when the Holy Spirit's all around us and in us, how are we going to feel when the Holy Spirit's removed? It's going to be on pure faith and endurance and believing that, okay, I missed the trib, but I'm going to stick it out through, I missed the rapture, but I'm going to stick it out through the tribulation. I think we're going to need the strength of Peter, what Peter did, accepted the grace and moved on and lived productively, no matter what our circumstances are. It's just a reminder for me of, just again, I was first focused on those who could be, converted, then the Jews, and now the folks that are going to be left behind. And I don't know why I'm experiencing that shift, but I am. And maybe it's because things are getting closer. And just a reminder to some of us that we've got to be strong and we've got to keep our wits about us, and most importantly, keep our faith about us and be like Peter. not like Judas. Obviously not like Judas because he betrayed Jesus, but again, so did Peter, in different ways, of course. But Peter lived to glorify God another day. And, if that's called upon for us to do, I think we just need to stay focused. So just sharing a thought. Again, I don't know if this helps anybody. Try to put things in perspective. But have a wonderful day, and God bless.